in the kingdom. We're excited about salvation and people coming to Jesus Christ. Oh, by the way, look who is coming to join us right now. Looks like Mike from around the world. Is that true?
Pastor Paul.
Yes.
I made it.
You did make it. You sound good.
Late? Oh, 2 minutes.
You're not
2 minutes late. Not bad.
Not bad. I had a song going anyway a little bit there, so I might have knocked you slowed you down. I don't know. Anyway, you're here, Mike.
I am. How you doing this evening?
Doing really good. I think that everybody here tonight is excited about hearing the things we're going to hear. It was a great week last Thursday. I want you to know that last Thursday night's broadcast, 73 people came to Jesus Christ. It was an amazing response to the Lord.
That's awesome.
Amen.
That's awesome.
All right, Mike. Well, we've oh, by the way, Mike, just Heidi said make sure that you ask Mike before we promote it too much. Would you be able to speak for us? We're going to have a webinar. We're actually calling it a summit, the effects of Planet X. It's going to be January 28th, 29th. It's going to air, but we would interview you anytime between now and then.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. She'll email you and we'll set it up. And I'll tell you, you're speaking in this, which you are very, last week you dropped the bomb on everybody. Okay. I mean, I made notes that we've heard from everybody. A lot of great information you gave us about that binary system, that celestial body behind the sun. And so we decided after that broadcast, the urgency to know more about what is incoming, whether it be meteor showers or meteor storms, whether it be blizzards and extreme weather conditions, volcanism that's happening, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, all those things, but also these other things like Planet X or the effects of Planet X. And I want to bring something up for you tonight. One of our listeners who actually cleans windows, her name is Kathy Landry, and I read her letter, but she was cleaning the windows in New Hampshire. And this is what she does for a living. And besides cleaning the window first with a very wet rag, then she sprays the Windex or that type of stuff on the window cleaner on there. Then after she cleans it, then she takes a little 4-inch blade and kind of scrapes it to make sure she gets everything. But when she got down to that part of it, a red dust was coming off the window. And it was everywhere. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that is? You brought it up before about 8 years ago and said, watch for it to come. Is that a sign that this meteor storm's getting closer, or is it a sign that Planet X is just behind the sun? What does it mean?
Well, you know what? She's not the only one. There's been sporadic reports of people washing off, their homes. And I remember this summer, there was a company that cleaned siding. They had a problem with that, with some of the chemicals they had were a little off in color, red hue being found on, certain some of their cleaning cloths and things of that nature. There have been people reporting, people who wax their cars of a reddish type of residue there, right? So, those reports are coming in. We have two situations with any type of red material, and a chemical analysis is the way you would do that, because you don't want the dust with silica in it. That means it came from some type of desert or arid region, but they've been picking up a lot of iron-based material that is red. And that stuff is in space all over the place. In observed binary systems out there, there is a lot of that stuff around. And if we have a twin system, right, with a lot of debris in the outer belt, kind of like ours, we have dust all throughout our heliosphere. So if once the other system gets in proximity to ours, that's going to be one of the first telltale signs that we're right there in the ballpark. It's beginning. And now keep in mind, this secondary system is not going to travel at constant speed, but will likely, think of it this way. It won't do this, but it will do close to this and get a lot faster as it gets closer. But think of something doubling in speed the closer it gets to us. That's how objects or suns orbit each other. So one of the any calculation somebody would have if they were to see an object way out there, right? And suppose they had an estimate and said, well, this thing is gonna, it'll have the greatest influence in 2034. Well, that date would be wrong based on optics, because all systems that have more than one sun, when those two objects are in close proximity, they speed up. The closer they get, the faster they travel. So they hit this point where they're traveling at their greatest speed, and they cause the most damage in both systems.
So,
and we're going to get close to that point. So when they see it, when everybody is seeing or noticing storms that have this reddish hue, winds, a loss of pressure is going to be felt on this planet. That's going to cause a host of issues. It's going to be that'll be the moment when it's too late. You can't. There are going to be some things people won't be able to do. So it'll happen that fast.
Okay, so in other words, as this binary system, as this Planet X or binary system, as it's getting closer and closer, at some point here, it's going to accelerate. Has that acceleration already begun?
Oh, yeah. It would have already begun. As soon as it whipped out and it was at its furthest distance, that was the slowest speed it will ever travel. As it comes inbound, it starts to increase its speed, which is somewhat exponential the closer it gets. It will also begin to vibrate our sun. Not a vibration that people can see, but it will begin to oscillate. Our sun becomes very erratic, especially in its behavior emissions. It'll emit more X-rays and things like that. Flares or magnetic, they look like magnetic strings will be, they'll be seen all over the sun. It'll be very sporadic, but yeah, they'll speed up as this takes place. And those are the days when we have the worst atmospheric problems, the most debris, and we see the strangest objects in the heavens. According to both what they saw in the past, the truth about what they saw in the past, and what's been observed in other systems, Pastor Paul, not one soul on this planet is going to be in denial during those days. Not one soul.
Are you serious?
Yeah, not one soul. During that time, the nature of things will become so strange. Well, think of it this way. Number one, we're going to have our pressure on this planet is going to change tremendously. So when you start thinking about high and low pressure systems like we have right now causing these storms, a high pressure system is that cold air from space coming straight down and then it fans outward. Low pressure, found close to the ground, is air that flows inward and travels upward because it's warmer, right? So when you have a high and low pressure system, of course, you have winds right in the middle of that where they meet together. So just imagine an influence upon this entire solar system and some of the density in the atmosphere altering or changing, becoming quite heavy. That's going to force cold air straight down to the ground in several places. But as the sun warms the surface of this planet, and in simulations, because every square inch of the earth is holds about 14.7 pounds of air, the wind speeds are going to be 200 plus in a lot of areas as it warms, and the oceans at room temperature will boil. All the water everywhere at room temperature is going to begin to boil wherever the sun begins to rise.
So what kind of superstorm? Well, wait a minute, 200-mile-an-hour straight line wind with the ocean boiling, that's going to create some kind of like mammoth, like some kind of magnanimous hurricane. I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, it'd be awful. It'll really be awful because with the oceans boiling and that water vapor going in the atmosphere, you're looking at a cycle we've not seen before, right? It's been observed in, controlled chambers, but never in real life. And unfortunately, we're not in a position to have any defense from anything like that. In fact, speaking about defense, if they shot down everything that was coming here and successfully did that, we would still have to face the fury of another star coming in proximity to ours. It is unavoidable. There is no getting, out of this, which is why so many have these contingencies. And there is much to discuss on that level. For example, if this scenario is true, Pastor Paul, the borders will be totally shut down. I mean, no one will fly from America anywhere. They're going to be stuck right here in America. Same thing is going to happen for other countries. They're going to reduce air travel to keep the populations in their respective places. So some people are going to have to come up with a different game plan, and this will happen long before its approach.
So air travel is going to get eliminated. AOC said she wanted it to happen for the Green New Deal, and we're seeing it. We're being very limited now where we can go with airplanes as far as leaving the country. You can still fly anywhere you want to domestically. You got to wear a mask on the plane. You don't have to have a vaccination to fly anywhere you want to in America, but you are seeing the tightening up, the tightening up. So what you're saying is they're gonna have to come up with other reasons for why we can't air travel.
Oh yeah,
without saying there's an incoming binary system that's gonna rock.
That's right.
Okay.
That means air travel, ship travel, anything that could take one person, right? And allow them to relocate to a different area. Because the one thing they don't want is everybody, suppose or they get some information and all of a sudden they find some sort of a safe zone. This is why all of your people who make hundreds of millions of dollars going up to billionaires have set their home fronts. They no longer have their greatest assets in America. They finished their moves about 2 years ago. And so they fly all over the place. Anyway, there's one exception, and that individual, I believe they know what's coming, but they will not move their home base, so to speak, outside of the U.S., but everybody else has moved their most expensive and greatest assets out of America into different regions because they have a hint that the northern, it's a debate on this with a lot of people, right? And hopefully people don't live their lives by debate, but by the spirit. But there's a debate in the northern hemisphere. Will become quite toxic. Why? Because we have most of our chemical plants and everything else in the northern hemisphere, most of our nuclear reactors in the northern hemisphere. And everybody knows if something upsets the atmosphere, if we start getting these consistent high winds, storms of great magnitude, it's going to damage the infrastructure. And all too often we forget about the nuclear power plants. We forget about the chemical and incineration places. We forget about the nuclear waste dumps that we have. All of that stuff can be in danger. And then everybody's going to be exposed to toxic conditions wherever they are. And the U.S. has most of them. So we all too often, we forget about that.
Folks, Mike around the world with us tonight. And the statement he just made about air travel, ship travel, and other nations is going to actually stop at some point. It's going to come to a halt as Planet X is coming in. They'll use different reasoning for it, like we're already seeing, whether it be pandemics or other types of weather conditions, maybe. But more is coming on. Mike, I want to share something with you. This was actually in the archives at nasa.gov. I want to put it on the screen for everyone to see. Mike Brown, along with Dr. Chad Trujillo of the Gemini Observatory in Hawaii, and David Rabinortz of Yale University from New Haven, Connecticut. These three scientists found what's called the planetoid on November the 14th, 2003. They named it the next year Sedna. Is that Planet X? That was in 2003. They found it. 2004, they gave it a name. I'm wondering, is that Planet X that they found?
They've been watching. Personally, I think it's more of a satellite than anything else, due to its behavior, due to its motion.
What do you mean a
they're just
satellite?
well, a satellite would be something like a smaller planet or moon or something like that.
Okay.
Not actually one of the, because here's I believe. Okay, let me just go ahead and break it out. This, whatever people are calling Planet X, Planet number 9, whatever the case is. Now this is from those who have, let's just say, secured the archaeological finds, right? They keep describing this object that comes by as something that men totally had mistaken. Let me put it to you this way. They regretted the fact that they thought it was solid, right? That they thought it was like every other standard body that would whiz by the earth during that time. And it also tells you that because it was written so long ago, that man had knowledge of what was out there in the heavens. They have, these images of Jupiter. They have these images of some other planets, and the hue is a bit different, but they certainly saw it. Saturn is one of them. They have a perfect depiction of Saturn, which is more than 12,000 years old. So they certainly had some sort of ability to see out there in space. One of the regrets that they had is that they said they made a mistake about the heavens. That was one of the greatest, that was one of the most repetitious statements they found in there. In fact, I think I've said this before here, though, but some of the ruins that people see, right, these temples that have been erected, a lot of people have made stories to fit the paradigm of that temple, because what they really found were star maps, right, like a calendar.
Yeah.
And it was a warning that what they went through is going to happen in the future. And they wanted everybody in the future to know, to give mankind a chance. In fact, there's a prayer attached to all of them, right? And in that prayer, there's a prayer that men turned back to God. Now, what God they were talking about, I don't know, but they wanted men to forsake their doings on the earth and to really consider their fellow man as far as love, because they, after all of what the life they lived, they found when this, I guess you'd call it an extinction event, took place, nothing was worth anything. And it was so bad that the survivors left warnings for everybody else. And that's what they have found these things. They have locked these things up. Of course, a lot of them are in England, in a museum, and some too are in the Middle East. Well, one was destroyed. But some of the references to some of these ancient gods in those stories, they're not gods at all. That's man's interpretation of something. But the military found out many, many years ago that those were actually planets, that they were describing planets. Even some of the stories, they were describing the happenings of planets, because when they lost writing, they couldn't just, they didn't have any paper or pens or anything else. They went through total devastations.
Right.
And so they made songs and they made poems. That's what these poems are without the music. They made songs because we can remember songs and melodies and the words that go with the melody, in the hopes that we would become smart enough, wise enough to discern what they wrote and heed the warnings. In fact, at the end it says, forsake earthly goods and save the soul, is the warning to everybody.
Wow.
But so all of this is going to come forward. All of it's going to come forward sooner or later, when they can no longer hide it. But I fear that when they do come forward with this, Pastor Paul, there's going to be so many different theories out there.
Yeah.
People are not, once again, they're not going to know what to believe. And that's going to be, one of those sad times. So I hope that they lock themselves in the prophecy.
Well, I think that's
really lock themselves into
right.
it.
Because if you study the Bible, folks, you can find it, the deep impacts of Revelation 8 that are going to hit the earth. He can read about the Isaiah apocalypse in Isaiah 24. Well, you know what? Just go to Matthew 24 and just read what Jesus said. There's going to be some unbelievable things that are going to happen. Mike, this is another quote over at NASA.gov. This one was out not long ago. It says, in an ideal situation, scientists would identify an incoming asteroid years before it hits Earth. That would provide ample time for what NASA calls the deflection strategy. So this strategy is already in play, isn't it?
Oh yeah, if everybody can remember this, when the one object, I forgot the name of that object, was coming around Earth, they actually ran quite a few simulations on it. In fact, any object they can study and run simulations on, they're going to do it. Now, the simulations are funny. They just don't take a computer and start running that. They have underground machinery that mimics every detail of missile launches, catch nets, and a few other. But they have these these pulse weapons, right?
Yeah.
Where they shoot a concentrated form of ions at an object way out there in hopes to deflect its trajectory. One of the problems they keep running into is that when these objects come close to us, right, they hit stuff coming into us, like Muamua did. That thing hit a couple of things.
What?
And by itself, without hitting anything, it kind of changed
I didn't know.
its own direction.
Well, I knew it was coming in. Now that was that interstellar object that came out from a different solar system. It come flying in. It was kind of doing like a somersault. We called it Uma, I think, or something like that. You're saying that thing hit some things on the as it went by?
Yeah, it hit a few things coming into the as it made its passage, which a lot of people didn't count on because I don't know, for some reason we keep seeing things in two dimensions, right? And we have debris spherically around our solar system. We rotate in one direction, yes, and inertia actually places a lot of items in certain places, but we have a lot of debris in this solar system that we're in right now, and that debris is moving all over the place, and it's become quite unstable because we've had a lot of objects that have come in, been captured by Jupiter, deflected just a bit, enough to hit the asteroid belt and start to unloosen, some of those objects that have been in orbit for only the Lord knows how long. So we have dangers not only from inbound objects, but also some of the objects that were in the Kuiper belts and so on and so forth that are now loose and traveling all over the place, captured by the sun, right? And being redirected all over the place, Pastor Paul. So we can expect not only a meteor storm from external objects and debris coming inbound from an external system, but we can also expect some of the objects in the Kuiper belt to actually, in the asteroid belts, right, to actually probably hit us. I would say that our chances are extremely high that we're going to get pummeled, and there's no real warning for that because they're too close, right? They're too close.
Are you think that
really
are we going to
have
get
some
hit?
Damage from that?
Do you feel like we're going to get hit with a couple bigger ones before Apophis gets here on April the 13th?
Oh, I think that we're going to get hit by more than a couple long before Apophis gets here.
So this is why they're making.
In fact, Pastor Paul, I think that when Apophis comes, the Earth will have undergone some massive changes. We will too. I think that folks around that time, when they see Apophis come, it's just going to add to the stress and the pressure they already have.
Because we've already encountered the dust, the extreme winds, the volcanism, the oceans boiling, the straight line winds, the fires burning everywhere.
Lots of fires.
Is that because of meteorites? Is it because of lots of fire, or is the sun going to be flipping out on us?
Well, our atmosphere, Pastor Paul, is changing. Okay. And I guess it's important to note that as our atmosphere changes, these high and low pressure systems are going to become larger and larger, especially the high pressure systems. Again, that's air coming from space, right? That heavy air, dense air coming down from space is very cold. and it smacks the ground and spreads out. Well, this is going to become, and as the sun, shows on the land, it warms the air and it acts against these high pressure systems. Those are low pressure systems. When these two meet together, they cause an extreme amount of wind. In the middle, you see isobars. They're called isobars. And that's where you get your high winds from. Well, as we continue on in our day-to-day lives, something is happening to our atmosphere. We're going to have, also, here's where the boiling water comes in. As when you're dealing with pressure, temperature, density, and constants, pressure being temperature times density times a constant, as it lowers, right, it's going to get to the point where it will be so low that the oceans will boil when it's only 70 degrees. So what will happen when the average temperature is 125?
Wait a minute. The average temperature is 125. Whoa, Mike. Whoa. Where?
We have to think of these extremes. When the sun comes up, right? Everybody's used in the morning. When the sun comes up, it's it may be chilly at night or, whatever. But when the sun comes up, it warms things up. Well, think of it this way. Think of without the sun, the temperature being about in the middle of July, the temperature being 40 degrees, right? And then as soon as the sun begins to rise, everywhere it shines, it starts to heat the ground up and the rocks up and everything else to a temperature of about 120 or 125. That's a pretty severe temperature difference. It's going to happen in lots of places.
When do you think that will start happening, Mike? I mean,
that'll begin this year. That will, everybody will begin to see that evolve this year. It's going to happen in quite a few places. It's happening already. These large temperature swings that we talked about a couple of years ago, they're happening now. I mean, severe temperature swings. The low pressure systems that are the size of the USA, right? We already we have 3 right now that are about to coalesce. And they came from the West Coast coming across the Pacific. We have the vapor constant in the Atlantic Ocean. That is how water evaporates in the atmosphere's ability to hold it, which is relative humidity, you could say, is that's altering fast because we have exotic gases in the atmosphere, right? Our temperature is warming, but it's also becoming quite cold in several different places. So, and they've already noted in history that as the glaciers were melting, right? As they melt, volcanism goes up. But why? Because of external forces. They have no relationship together, right? Glaciers and volcanism, but they're both affected by one external source. And that has to do with a gravitational pull. It has to do with a change in density of our atmosphere from exotic materials being dumped all around the earth. And so we're going to see, we're just beginning this, right? So all of what we see, think of it as a car just starting to move, and it's very, very slow right now. So slow you can barely notice it. So what happens when that car is going at 50 miles an hour? Everybody's going to notice, and it's going to get a lot worse. We're going to get progressively worse.
In this 2022, Mike, as we start talking about the effects of Planet X, do you believe, or do you see, or do you have info that the 125 degree average temperature thing taking place, straight line winds, that kind of thing, but do you see massive earthquakes? Do you expect earthquakes to happen this year over 8, maybe close to 9? Do you think that's going to happen this year?
Well, if we had we'd never know if we had a 9 by data, because they would never print that. The computers are not set up to even to publish that. In fact, before the numbers show up on any website with NOAA and all these US and EAS sites, all that data is scrubbed, all of it's scrubbed. So it goes through a secondary system where they filter that data, they split that data. The public does not get to see the absolute facts. They get to see what is scrubbed, what whatever they present to an individual, because they always do a reassertion of what the people can handle. For example, if there's an earthquake in one of the states and people get nervous and they start getting phone calls and the chatter goes up, they can always tell when the chatter goes up. They will instantly change it, scrub it, make it vanish, do whatever they have to do. And then they know when something vanishes, people tend to forget pretty quickly, right? Because they don't want that reference there. It causes people to get nervous, and people are already on the edge. So they scrub data all the time. This goes with any optics that anybody can access on the internet concerning space also. Where you're looking at satellite data, things of that nature, they scrub that data. They will never show the raw data to anybody. It goes through several filters, you could say, before it ever hits the public. And they have to downplay it that way. That's why a lot of people see the reversal of any declaration that will come out about an earthquake or something like that. Often you'll see a reversal if it's inside of a state that does not usually have earthquakes or things like that.
Yeah, you know what happened? There's a couple things happened on earthquakes. One, there was a 6.1 earthquake that was reported in southern Indiana, in Jasper, Indiana, which is pretty close to Louisville, Kentucky. 6.1. That would have been the largest earthquake in Indiana in over 100 years. And they had it. It was on the U.S. Geological Survey. It was on NOAA. It was everywhere. And then all of a sudden, it was on everyone, right, Heidi? And then it was scrubbed. I mean, I don't know. It was up for maybe 20 minutes. What do you think happened there?
Well, they felt that whatever that was, that earthquake, they felt that in Virginia. They felt parts of it, and there were people in Pennsylvania that felt it. There were people in several states that felt that earthquake. So, yeah, they scrubbed it because it's an unusual location, right? And they don't want anybody getting nervous. Right now, they know that everybody's mind is on apocalyptic a type of disaster that's coming, right? It's kind of like the apocalypse they're thinking about. They already know this. And so anything that would lead an individual to really get some momentum behind, that idea, they're going to scrub it. They're going to take it away. They're not going to discuss it. They're going to deflect away from it. Whatever they have to do, that's what they're going to do. They have a mandate for this.
Yeah, Heidi's got a. What do you say? We're going to say to Mike, Heidi?
It was very deep. It was 426 kilometers deep, if I remember correctly. But the other thing is, it's over by some very interesting base, a small base over there.
A small base over there somewhere.
Yeah.
It was near it.
Yeah.
And they said it was over 464 kilometers deep. So do you have any info on that, Mike?
Well, the governor of West Virginia had an interesting topic about 3 months ago. And no one paid attention. They were talking about underground supersonic transportation. No one paid attention. No one paid attention. Because if you do that, he started naming numbers. And he went near that depth, that 450 kilometers. He went near that depth. So, and then it was gone. He didn't discuss it anymore because it was he was talking about some transit system he probably shouldn't have talked about. Anyway, that did happen. But sometimes, on occasion, Pastor Paul, if we do have underground facilities, and again, if you have to open the vents on them, or if you're trying to seal them or something like that, you're going to have those large explosions. And sometimes they run into things. So they have to, there are lots of armaments underneath the ground for a reason. There are policies set up for nuclear weapons to be used in special cases. So nothing gets topside that could be down there. So sometimes you have these large explosions. But I believe that this one was a thermal event, a real earthquake, but tied to a thermal event.
Well, yeah. Are you saying it was a real earthquake, but tied to a thermal event, meaning a detonation by?
Well, all military bases had a mandate by 2000, and I believe it was 17, and they moved it back a little. All bases had to be independent of the power grid, right? They had to be on they have to supply their own power. So a lot of them were on thermal, geothermal energy and gas and so on and so forth. In order to access that gas, sometimes you have to go pretty deep, and you have to do, they do special things to get to that. But to my knowledge, military bases do not need the power grid. They had to do this because of what because they had Jade Helm right after that, with going along with that mandate for a reason. And they did the logistics training with Walmart at the exact same time, right? Remember, everybody was talking about the Walmarts being converted. What's happening with Walmart? Where'd this Walmart go? This store went empty in Walmart.
Right.
And so the logistical system had to be set up. And they did have construction at most of these sites telling people that they were doing plumbing, this, that, and the other. No answers ever came. Well, clearly, plumbing is underground. So if you're not going to bring in, 17 trucks underground to fix a water pipe, that's not going to happen. But that's precisely what people were reporting, that they saw trucks pulling underground in some of these new entryways that were built near these Walmarts, and they never came back up. They would just go down there and disappear. So there's a, if a person broadens their scope, they can see elements in place where preparations have already been made. And what they're doing now is positioning all elements on the top. A long time ago, I had a discussion, Pascal, with some individuals, and there was consensus that upon proximity of a binary twin or any threat, a planetary threat, that it would be lawlessness up top, because they would have to abandon most of the operations up top. They would keep the appearance for as long as they could, right? By having people fill positions that are not quite qualified to fill those positions, but could, fool the public into believing that everything is normal. And they will try to maintain that appearance of normalcy for as long as they can. And if you just look at the world right now, nothing makes sense. Nothing. Nothing does. From our governmental system to certain happenings with China and around the world, nothing is making sense. Nothing is. Stability is gone.
When you make a point, the supply chain shortages of stuff. You told us 2 years before that happened that you said, keep an eye on spam. You kept saying, watch, pretty soon you're going to see your shelves go empty. And I'm like, why? Why? Well, now we know why. The pandemic came along, and then the next thing you know, we can't travel, and then there's mandates, and then there's change of mandates, and then there's confusion, and then we can't get semiconductors all of a sudden out of Taiwan, and now you can't build new cars, and you can't get parts for anything.
But that's the least of our problems, when they're controlling monoclonal antibodies.
Yes.
And they're controlling other antivirals, and now all of a sudden the meat market.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So microbial medicines, and for the to treat people, we can't, all of a sudden we can't get our hands on this.
That's an abandonment.
The president Biden said he's taken over the meat industry. I don't know what he knows about it, but he thinks he's going to somehow fix it by throwing money at competitors. Mike, is this what you're saying? There's a lot of stuff going on right now to keep us occupied and off balance, because Planet X is coming. No stopping that. And they've been working for 40 years underground to create these underground cities to save a civilization. Is that their mindset right now?
That was in the playbook all the way back in the 70s. Everything they talked about in the 70s is happening right now. Everything. How is that possible? The food disruption, right? If you were going to supply, put more resources to whoever goes in these places, and we know that China has them, the U.S. has them, Germany has them, Russia has them. If you were going to really stock them up, you would have to divert your half of your, well, if not most of your supplies down to these locations. Now, what you could not have are civilians obstructing the flow of this supply chain going into these places. The water would be the first thing missing. That was the first shortage
Yeah.
we had, was a water shortage.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then everybody forgot about that. They're not even thinking about that. If they go and do an investigation on where the fresh water is, their jaw would drop. So we have that problem. Now, all of a sudden, we have materials, critical materials, not just any materials, but materials necessary to sustain people, right?
Exactly.
Those are
Yeah.
the items that we're missing now.
Yeah, we're missing them.
You can't, without saying a word, people should be able to look and see and say, wait a minute, how is it, all the critical stuff is missing,
Right.
and then we get the leftovers, or these, plus they have the white trains already.
The
with a big
white
stamp
train.
on the side.
Well, what's that
Um,
about? What's the white trains? What's in the white?
Those are going to be mission critical to supply, to appease, I guess, the populace, to carry those cars. By the way, are for cargo. Some of them are refrigerated, so they're going to be carrying food and things like that by rail, to get past, or to travel different routes away from highways and things like that. You're going to see that more and more. You're going to see a lot of rail lines activating. Why? Because if we're going to have a problem with some inbound secondary system, our roads are not going to be able to handle it. And if our roads can't handle it, the first telltale signs that this whole scenario is true is they're going to begin to divert money they would put on the highways. They're going to put it somewhere else.
Put it in the
Why
rail.
waste money on a highway, right? That's going to be, start crumbling and just be no good anyway. Why would you do that? So they're constantly, there are these plans like this, and the Navy knew about it a long time ago. In fact, the part of that military industrial complex that everybody is, talking about this, that, and the other, a big portion of that is the Navy. It is the Navy, a big portion of that. The other part would be, organizations like NASA, but they don't house those things in the U.S. It's much bigger than that.
So is Walmart owned by the federal government now? I mean, are they a shell? Is their job to stay on top of the ground and feed the populace above ground, but the tunnels are being put in effect for some of the distribution below ground? And I'm hearing you say that these government-wide trains of distribution of food and water is going to be used to feed both the populace above and below ground as things evolve. Is this part of the Agenda 2030 United Nations global sustainability? Is that what they're really talking about here?
Well, that's almost like a global sustainability. That sounds like something that you would implement during a crisis. That's one of those crises.
Well, that's what they put in place.
Agendas.
That's what we're
That's
working
a
on.
crisis point agenda. So right now, Pastor Paul, if people would look around, they're in the middle of something, one of the greatest transitions they would ever know in their lifetime. But they can't. A lot of people cannot see it. Why? Because they're involving people in other conversations, taking them off all the cues that people see around them. Walmart, by the way, is the most sophisticated logistics system on the face of the earth. Walmart is. It was perfected. It was fed money and everything else. Everybody supported the development of Walmart. One of the milestones of Walmart was never the store. It wasn't about the money. It was about the logistics system and how efficient it is, right? Somebody can pick something off the shelf. An hour later, a truck is on the road with some calculation of everybody else's stuff, and they get the best gas mileage on their, with their trucking. That was their strongest suit. In fact, the same algorithm that worked for Walmart was a part of that was given to Amazon, right? So Amazon is a very smooth system, and a piece of that was given to UPS. Remember, UPS couldn't deliver packages, and they were late and everything. And then a change came, but it only came after Walmart sealed up their logistics package. Now that we have all 3G must go away, as I stated a couple of months ago, because they have to clear the airwaves for the rest of the 5G band. when the rest of the 5G band begins transmission in about 3 weeks, that's going to turn on the remaining machines necessary to manage the rest of what people have never seen before. That's the complete communications system. And I'm telling you, they're stalling quite a few things until they get this thing online. It's already learned, it's already educated, it's already implemented, it's already operational. They just need to open up the rest of the cortex, so to speak, so this thing can do what it has to do.
So you're saying even though 5G is operating right now, it's kind of running, it's idling. That the 5G complete band is about to be fully released, which ties. I'm understanding AI communication between
Absolutely
every machine on the planet pretty well, right? And coordinates.
That's right. 5G right now is operating at about 20%.
Okay.
That's it. About 20%. When that 3G band, when that's cleared, right? It's just like the human body. Right now, the head is working, but the arms are not working. The torso is not working. The legs are not working. The rest of the machinery will, in fact, be operational when the rest of this band is cleared. And then, then we'll see a lot of new things, a lot of new publications. Get ready for technology to jump about 100 years. They found this out in 2 weeks last week. They were in development of something. I can't name what it was or what it is, but they were in development of something. So what they did was they began to implement some of the AI architecture and some of the existing machines that they have to develop a better scenario or a better product. Let's say this thing, all the years they had in R&D, right? It did in about 10 minutes. All of it. And it found new ways of doing things that our greatest scientific minds could never think of. And it did all of that within the course of an hour. Right now it's being implemented and it works. And so you have many machines like that coming online in about 2 to 3 weeks. So just think of how this world is really going to change. Medical sciences is going to really change, Pastor Paul. Do you not know that they've isolated that with artificial intelligence, they can isolate genes so fast, right? Now, I mean fast. They can isolate genes so fast that they have perfected it's a shot that you can get and you'll grow all brand new teeth again, right? They can turn on and off the genes in your body. They can customize genes by artificial intelligence because it can go well beyond what we're able to conceive of. It can do things that we never thought of, and this is what they're finding more and more and more, is that it's doing things and utilizing or suggesting utilization of things that we would never conceive of, right? So it's as far as the brain project and all those things, it will advance that by about 100 years in the scope of a week. And then you mix that with this quantum computing conundrum, because they have problems with quantum computing. AI solved what CERN could not. In fact, AI has made some suggestions for CERN that absolutely worked as soon as they tuned it to those specifications. First they simulated, and then boom, it works. So get ready for a technological jump in quite a few things. They've also found out how to extend the life of a human being by 70 years.
You mean to take it from 70 to 140?
There's a degradation gene in the body that causes genes or your cells to degrade, right? All they have to do is turn that switch off, and your cells will not degrade, but will in fact multiply. Right.
Well, you're getting in an area that I've actually can't say a lot about, but I do know that the telomeres can grow. The telomeres can grow, which is part of your stem cells. You grow, and that can prolong life, or at least prolong it a little bit, or push it out there a little bit. That's theoretically, but you're saying that they have found a certain gene that could
that controls it. Yeah,
that controls the rest of the genes.
They can manipulate it. They found one of the parts they couldn't do was how to turn off a gene in a person's body, right?
Okay.
Or how to turn on a gene in a person's body that's already been shut off. They couldn't think of it. AI has. It's already done it. So I'm telling you, when the rest of this thing comes on, I'm going to call it a thing, because you're talking about some metaphysical machine, right?
Right.
But when it comes online, get ready for some jumps in just about everything, which is my personal opinion is that it is going to really, it'll be the nail in the coffin, so to speak, because what it will do is you have something called live articles. Now, I don't know if anybody's
I
heard
never
of this.
heard of
I'm
that
sure
one.
that some
Live
people
articles.
have, but
I've not heard of that. No.
what that means is, suppose you're reading something on the internet, an article about something that happened in the Middle East. The thing you won't know is that no human being wrote that article, right? AI will have on the fly put that article together just for you. Now imagine this all over the world. And imagine that we develop opinions based on what we read, what we find out. Imagine a system, right, that has the ability to, on the fly, create articles. I mean, just at the snap of a finger to deliver to whomever it so desires. But it will skew the opinion of that individual ever so slightly to shift or to maneuver the world into any direction it wants. Because what they've also found was people are at a very delicate moment in history, meaning they believe everything is what they're saying. They believe everything.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to believe, solid things that they used to believe, but they're looking for something more. So you have an adaptive system that's going to feed them a little bit more. That means psychologically, people are going to have they're going to be out there, and the truth is going to be, might as well get a coffin ready for the truth, because it won't be found amongst all this stuff. And we know that young kids are primed for discovery. People are primed for information. It's going to give it to them. People argue right now over information, Pastor Paul. Over information,
I
they
know.
argue, they fight, they do this. It's going to become quite nefarious coming from a machine. And yeah, so that's just part of what's developing. So when it comes to the dangers of Earth, you can almost forget about finding the truth about what's coming through this system. It is so funny how this system is going to be implemented. At the same time, the expectation of an intruder is expected, right? It's so ironic of the timing of this.
The intruder talking about the binary system that's on its way. So you've got a combination of things. And if we look at it from a Bible prophecy standpoint, Jesus said there's a time coming, a tribulation time, like the world has never seen before, nor ever again. Is it, Mike, because the perfect storm of technology, lack of spirituality, lack of substance, food and water, incoming effects of Planet X that changes the temperature structure, the flow of the messes with the magnetosphere, that it boils the volcanism, boiling the oceans. I mean, so you got all of these different parts moving at once, and you've got men trying to figure out how to survive it, planning for years to hide underground, so is this what you're saying, that the perfect storm, it's like the end of days? Or as Jesus would say, when you see this coming, you need to look up, lift up your head, your redemption's drawing nigh. In other words, there's no hope left on the planet. Is that what's coming?
Oh, yes. I believe it's forming fast. And you know what? The scripture that gets me, Pastor Paul, is one where Jesus said that the world would know nothing. Just like in the days of Noah, they didn't know a thing until the flood came and took them all away.
Right.
Right now, nobody's nervous. Not a soul is nervous about volcanism, right?
No.
Not a soul is nervous about the Earth having an impact. We can have an impact in 9 hours and nobody would know about it, so nobody's concerned about it. Why? Because you can't really find clear information, and then when you do find it, if you don't like it, you're going to find another article that will disprove it. It's a phenomenon that's on the internet. For every truth you find, you can find 20 articles that can disprove it, right? And people get their verification from the internet. See, that makes the Holy Spirit that much more important to me.
Right.
It makes the what God put inside brothers and sisters who really accepted Christ, it makes them the source of a lot of things, because we're coming to a time where you will not be able to trust anything that you see. I mean anything, right? These storms, for example, how in the world did those people get stuck on the highway during a snowstorm? And it happened again today. Why?
I know.
Why did it happen? You know what? I went back and I heard
It's hard to find the weather, though, Mike. One thing is you can't get a good, clear weather forecast. It seems like every time you Google it, it changes the time. We were having that issue today. But go ahead.
In Google. At the I did a special observation today, right?
Okay.
I saw the Weather Channel, and Jen Cantor is a pretty good meteorologist.
Yes, he is.
He's a good one. So he was warning about this thing for 3 days. But every time he warned, it's almost like people would hear but not hear at the same time.
Yeah.
And in truth, he kept saying the same thing over and over. Stay off the roads, stay off the roads, stay off the roads. They would not hear. They wouldn't hear. They wouldn't hear because they couldn't verify. There's a frame of mind that we're in right now. If people cannot verify something on the internet, they can't accept it as truth. They can't do anything with it. This is a trap people have set themselves in, which makes the Spirit that much more important. One thing people are going to have to learn to do is to trust the voice of the Lord.
Amen.
Because he will confirm it. He'll confirm it through all of his children if he has to. But there's not going to come a time when he's going to have us so deaf we can't hear him. If we would trust him more than we do man, and that the AI is going to assist in that for those who believe in Christ, we would begin to perceive a lot. Because, Pastor Paul, my greatest concern right now is that we're too far into prophecy, and people are not recognizing all the components of it.
Amen. They're still asking. We still get this question. So when do you think the end times are going to start? Blows my mind. And these are people that go to church, and it's not their fault. I think they're not being taught.
No, it isn't. They're not teach. They just won't teach prophecy, Pastor Paul. It's more like psychology when you go to a certain place. Which is why I'm glad you tackle the subject you do, because people are still trying to, I don't know, have it. They're still trying to make it like Sesame Street in there, something like that. But they're going to get their wake up call shortly too, because Pastor Paul, when AI goes online, when 5G goes online, it's only going to be, I'll give it a few months before the governmental transition takes place all over the world.
Wow. Whoa. So once this, and you're saying it's going to happen in about 3 weeks or so. Then it's going to go from 20% operational to close to 100% operational. And when that happens, you give it a few months and watch governmental changes totally go into effect. I mean, are you talking about like changes of controlling population, new rules, like all of this?
More than that. The rules are nothing, Pastor. We're talking about the very core structure of government is going to be transitioned. They don't have a choice. There's another element coming on the scene. They don't have a choice. They have their deadline they're working by.
Okay.
If you can understand that,
I understand
they have a deadline, and
it's coming.
They are not going to miss that deadline, because evidently these demands are coming from one source. And no one, well, I'll say this, everybody is nervous. They will not defy these demands. They keep saying this one
Who's
phrase.
This one source? Is this someone on earth? Is this a
someone
group?
on earth? And they keep saying that all the resources, now this is coming from the highest people that people know. They keep saying the controller of the resources is requesting this. He has trillions to throw around. They keep saying this, and I'm telling folks, I'm telling you right now, when this artificial intelligence network comes online, that's his conduit to monitor everything, and nobody can do anything about it.
Folks, Mike's around the world dropping some more heavy load on us, but it actually, we need to know it. This is why we have these broadcasts on Thursday night. We need to know what's happening, and then we look at the Bible, and the Bible told us this, but it's easy to read it. It's another thing to live it, it's another thing to start experiencing it. But we can do this because God said, I'll never put more upon you than you're able to bear. And with every temptation, I'll make a way of escape that you might be able to bear it. And we can bear it because we can bear one another's burdens. And so, Mike, I want to thank you for breaking this info out for us tonight. This is another great program. And there's people listening right now that truly may say, I got to get myself right with God so that I can figure out what I'm doing. Because I want to tell you, folks, you got to have Jesus in this time. Am I right, Mike? You got to have Jesus.
Amen. Yeah, you do. That's the joy of Christ, Pastor Paul, because right now, today can be the first day of clarity, the first day of that walk, and they won't be missing anything. They'll be fully informed. Jesus will certainly never abandon him. He'll walk us all the way through. He's going to get us all the way home, not part way.
Amen.
He already promised he'd never leave us nor forsake us. And he also said that all who have come to me, the Father hath given me, and I will in no wise cast out.
Amen.
I will raise him up the last day. That's one of the most, that's the greatest promise anybody could ever give. And that's worthy of hoping for, right? That's
Amen.
A great hope indeed.
All right, Mike. Well, hey, we'll talk again next Thursday, and Heidi will get you set up for when we're going to film and get you ready, get everybody ready for the Planet X summit, which sounds like you are geared and ready for. You're giving us little bits at a time. Can't wait. We need it.
Well, I'm ready for it, Pastor Paul. That'll be a blessing. God bless you, brother. You
All
too,
right.
Heidi. It's always an honor.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. God bless, brother. It's an honor.
All right.
Amen. Bye-bye. I wouldn't even hesitate. Excuse me. I wouldn't even hesitate. If you're not saved, you don't want to run around in this misinformation world. You don't want to be relying on the government press conferences. You don't want to be sitting around wondering which train you need to get on or which bus is taking you to which camp or where you're supposed to show up to pick up your government supplied foods. You want to make sure you are being led by the Spirit of God because you're saved. You want to be ready when the rapture comes so that you're not left behind. I'm going to ask you to do something right now. I want you to type, I want to be saved. I want to be saved. We had over 8,000 people here tonight at the peak. And many of you need Jesus. He will save you. Just type, I want to be saved. And the moderators will help us. We'll do everything we can to write it down and help you. I'll pray with every one of you that wants to be saved. Let's do it now, okay? Let's do it right now in Jesus' precious name. Amen.